So a while back, I was asked if I'd make a tutorial on my sprite stacking process with Aseprite, and this is going to be that. It's going to be a bit more of a long form video where I talk about what sprite stacking is very briefly for those who don't know, and then go into my process on how I actually create the stacks. It won't contain a portion about code. There are resources online that can teach you how to do this in Godot, and later on I'll be making my own one that's updated for Godot 4. So, what is sprite stacking? Essentially, it is creating 2D images out of lots and lots of slices and then putting them together to create a sprite. Now, you might say, why would you do this? This sounds like a lot of effort for not really any purpose. Well, the main benefit is you can rotate the resulting stack as if it was a 3D object. You can only rotate it on one axis, though. Uh, there's some limitations to it, but that's part of the fun. If you're not game deving with limitations, are you really a game dev? Now, this can be very handy for hard surface objects and top-down games, of course. I can imagine this being used in other kinds of games, but currently that's all I've ever used it for. Um, there isn't really much you can do in the way of animation with a stack like this because making the animation is a total pain, and actually getting in a game is not easy either. But it is entirely possible. And it's something that I'll cover in a much later tutorial as well, so be sure to stick around. To get started, what you're going to need is one of these two tools by John Topilski. I'll be linking them down below. But the first one is the Stack Sprite Viewer and the Stack Sprite Visualizer. I'll be using the viewer for my tutorial, so you can just go ahead and download that. Essentially, it's just a little gizmo where you can drop your stack sprite into, and you can see what it looks like while you're working on it. It's a very clever little app. So to start off, open Aseprite and make a new project. I recommend something very small, starting out 32 by 32 at the maximum, because it can get very exhausting to do a big stack. Like increasing resolution in pixel art, increasing a stack, because you're working with a whole new dimension, it multiplies the time and energy it takes to make the stack very, very quickly. So I've made the mistake of using much too high a resolution many times. Now, I'd recommend using a palette with a lot of nice linear ramps, because it helps you shade your models and it gives depth to whatever you're making. Sorry, you can pin this. By default, it's pinned, and it just sits on top over here. You can put it wherever you like, and you can just see your model as you make it. So the first thing you want to do is obviously save. And we're going to call this car. And you can go ahead and export that with Control E. Find that file and just drag and drop it over here, and it'll automatically detect the width and the height of your canvas. And you just press confirm. Now, anytime you do something here, we can start off by plotting out where we want our wheels to be. If you hit Control E again and you export it, it'll show up here in the stack viewer. There's a few different filters here that you can play with. I quite like using the pixelate filter because I want my stacks to look pixelated when I'm actually doing the game. But you can totally make whatever you want with any of these filters on. And you can also pause or just turn it around and look at different parts of your model. Very, very handy. So you're going to get very used to your timeline, because this is how you add new layers to the stack. Every new frame in your animation timeline will be a new layer in terms of the height of the stack. So you can see what you're doing by turning on onion skin, Now you can see what the previous layer looked like. Previously, I tried to use actual layers for this, and although I was able to make stuff, it was really painful. But after speaking to John and him releasing the stack viewer, it really sped up the workflow quite a great deal. So initially, we're just going to sort of figure out the shape that we want for our car. I think we'll do a blue car. And the height as well. Because we want to just get a feel for what the end shape is going to look like. Now, the easiest way to add new frames, if you've worked with animation at all, is to just do either Control B or Control N. Control B, Alt N, sorry, and Alt B. Yeah, no, I'm totally cooked on that one. Alt N gives you a new frame. It duplicates the current frame and adds it to the end of the timeline, or next to where you are. And Alt B creates an empty frame. Usually, I make an empty frame at the beginning and end of my timeline. And if I want to add to the height, then I can do it from there. Because not having this, you have to drag it around and it's a whole pain, and it's really just not worth it. Now, what I'd recommend is you make sure that the bottom and top of your car is about one color up and down. Your model from the rest, because that helps really adds depth to the model. You can see already there, we already got the shape of our car going. It's very simple and blocky, but the whole part of the process is to just continually iterate and keep checking back on our model until we've got something that we like. I don't really have a set process other than just fooling around until it's looking more or less like something that I want. And things like circles, if you know how to draw a circle in pixel art, they work the same way in the stack. Imagine viewing it from the side. So instead of, if we just exported it as now, we just have some blocks over here for the wheels. But if we shave off a little bit, and then we duplicate this frame, move it one over, gonna get a bit closer to what a circle actually looks like. That's looking fine. And what we'll also do is we'll add some chrome, some white walls to give our wheels a better look. We actually need to do another frame here. And there you go, we got some wheels. Pretty quick and easy. Now what you can also do, and I do recommend this, is when you create certain parts of your model, do them in their own layer. And then if you need to move something around like this, just by like a single frame, you don't have to go layer by layer and move them around. I'm not going to do as I say though. You can watch me suffer. So there we go. It's looking more like a monster truck than a normal car. Maybe I'll lean into that. We'll make a monster truck today. Beef up the size of these wheels. But essentially, this is just voxel art. We are making an object that where the sprites have both a vertical, a Y, an X, and a Z position. But the thing that makes it interesting is that the sprites themselves, the pixels themselves, don't have depth to them. So whatever you create as a finished project will always be a flat image. And it really leads to quite a unique aesthetic that you've seen projects nowadays where they can nail a pixel filter on 3D games and it looks pretty decent, but this is like a for sure way of getting something like that. Now you can see over there, even though the tires would in theory be covered by the next layer. Sorry. So you see this is the top of the tire, and this is the layer below that. You'd think that this would cover that over there, but it won't. So oftentimes you have to draw to inlay details like this so that they don't get seen by, because there's a gap between everything. Like you'll sort of get the feeling for it as you go, but it's sort of unintuitive when you start out. That's how I would describe most of working with sprite stacking. You do kind of need to engage a different part of your brain to get the results you want. See, there we go. It's the center of the circles aren't really circles; they're crosses, but I think we can live with that. You can start doing other pixel art tricks like using different colors and anti-aliasing if you really want to get sweaty about it and get certain results. But generally, when starting out, I recommend you just focus on getting the right shapes before you start over engineering your project. And the other thing, like our tires over here, when you do details on the surface of a car, on any surface, sorry, like this, you'd think that you could just do something like that and the detail would show on the outside, and you totally can, but it leads to more flickering if you don't inlay the details. Doing single pixel lines usually show up as a real mess. It looks fine there, but it can be pretty gross when you're doing fine details on a model. So I'd recommend, instead of doing details and that kind of stuff, focus on your shading. That's usually how I get my models to look good. And if I am going to do details, I try and make sure that the details are at least 2 pixels, 2 pixels wide or inlaid. And you can do this vertically as well. That helps. So instead of doing like a line, you do a line of 2 by 2. And this is kind of like, some of this is going to be information that you can't use until you're in the source and you're like, ah, I see what he was talking about now. So you're just going to have to give it a try yourself. But I'd say these wheels are nice and chunky now. Export it one more time, have a look at it. Yeah, those are pretty nice and beefy wheels. Now, I don't actually know what a monster truck looks like, so it might be a good time to go grab a reference. I think I will do that. By the way, the palette I'm using is Apollo by Adam C. Eunice. Very, very nice palette for sprite stacking. It's what I used to learn to sprite stack and do most of my initial stacks. Damn, these things are beefy. Alright, I don't think we're going to have such a crazy monster truck. It's going to be more of an RC than a real monster truck. But I think I'm going to give it more of a flatbed kind of a look. We're just going to update this. And I think we'll just use a sort of a light gray for the back of the truck. You don't want things to blend together too much, because otherwise it just becomes a very flat image. Now this is where the fun starts. You can cut away over here inside the model. Okay, that's enough. And let's export it and see what it looks like. Now, as you can see, I didn't do this correctly, because I forgot to cut away on the next one as well. I think we won't even have that high of a rim. Okay, now we've got the back of the truck. And copy paste that layer. It's much easier to just copy paste than to redraw every time. Okay, that's looking fairly nice. Now we'll add a bit of gloss to the back over here. As you can see, I'm going to inlay that gloss over there by 2 pixels. You don't have to do this, but it's what I have found to be best practice. Okay, that looks kind of terrible. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a bit of a slope. And maybe also change the material to something a bit less dark. So making slopes in a sprite stack is pretty much impossible, but you can fake them because, again, like I said, they look... You can't really see the difference between the same color if they're at a different level. Yeah, I think I know what the problem is. I need to get rid of the gloss on this layer here. That'll probably help a little bit. And I am just going to move these back. It'll probably be fine. And let's texture the truck bed a little bit. See, I've messed up a little bit over here. We've got 1 pixel details. Will it be fine? It looks okay. I wouldn't call it stellar, but it looks fine. And I think what I'm also going to do over here, beneath the window, is add a bit of darkness. Bit of shading over here. Help define that window a little bit. That kind of helps. And I think what I'll do as well, so we'll add another layer over here. Take this one back to... That is way too light. Yeah. I think that'll look a bit better. And I'll probably do the same for the hood of the car. Now you see, you get issues like this when you use colors that are the same, is it just kind of blends together and it looks a little bit gross. So this is where it kind of challenges you to play around with other colors and come up with more interesting designs for your projects. As you can see, I have no idea what a car looks like, but that's okay. We can even just shade this whole thing black. And it's important that you don't leave holes on the inside, because this can and will show up inside the game engine, usually as like artifacts and noise. So I don't recommend you skimp on the inside. And it doesn't really matter, you're going to be rendering the sprite anyway. Transparency still has a cost. It's not free. I think what we need to do is increase this by a little bit. Maybe cut one over here. That's looking a little bit better. Do this a bit closer. Or maybe we'll just do something like this. Maybe that's a little too dark. We can add headlights to our little truck. That's a little goofy, but you know, whatever works. See, if I'd just done that on another layer, I could have done something very smart and just moved it down the timeline to where I wanted it to be. But instead, I was not very smart. So instead, we'll do that today. We'll do that right now. Okay. Now, we shouldn't have those issues. I'll inlay that as well. Okay, that looks a little goofy. Not what we want. Okay, yeah. Those headlamps are a little thick. Little thick. I feel like they're kind of fine in theory on like a bull bar. So let's do that. And remember, this is part of the vehicle as well, so we can add shading at the top, a bit lighter, shading on the bottom, a bit darker, and that'll help add a bit of depth. Okay, that looks almost sort of what I want. Now I think we still need to make the car itself a bit deeper. New frame. Just gonna do this over here to give it a look, because I don't want to. And essentially, the layer order will be its rendering order. So whatever's at the top will draw over other stuff. So you can use that to your advantage. Okay, that's a little goofy, but it's sort of what I want. What am I doing wrong here? Ah, yes, okay. So the details won't show up because essentially what's underneath, the layer underneath is the same color. So even though I've cut away stuff over here, you won't see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a bit of a darker color over here. That should help show us what's underneath. Yeah, there we go. Now that's still a little bit ridiculous. The tires are a little too small for the size this monster truck. So I think we'll go back a bit on these cuts. We don't really need them. We'll do something else. I will still be using this actually. But what I'll use is a different color to help differentiate what I want. Use a lighter blue actually. And you don't need to do what I'm doing here, because details on the inside won't be seen unless there's a way to see them. But it does kind of make me feel nice. You know, in a Bob Ross kind of a way. That looks sort of fine. I think we will extrude them a little bit. That's some 3D terminology for you right there. Have a look at what that looks like. Oh yeah, that looks nice. That looks very nice. And on the top layer, we'll even add a bit of this lighter blue. Sometimes adding a bit of a lighter color on the same layer will make it look like there's a layer above it. So you can get away with tricks like that. Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty nice looking truck right now. Add a bit of a light blue to the back of the edges over here. I actually want to make it look like this can open up. So let's go ahead and do that. And this car is missing windows on the sides of the actual. No, I can't do that. Windows on the door is what I'm trying to say. There we go. And you can see as you work away at it, the details slowly start picking up quite quickly until you have what you're looking for. And I'd say it's looking fairly nice. The bonnet could use some work. I think let's go and shape that up a little bit. Let's extend the red here, because now we've cut it away. We will see that. That looks a bit better. Something I'm missing. I think it's a bit of this darker blue over here. Maybe a bit more. Over here as well. Something's just not right with the shape of the hood. And this is what I get for not looking at a reference. It really is my own doing. But not too much I can do about that right now. Nope, that's unaligned. Let's do that again. There we go. I think the windscreen should be another layer down as well. There we go. We'll add a bit of a darker blue around that to give it a bit of depth. Is that working? Is that what I want? Not really. I think we'll use a lighter blue instead over here. Sort of what I want. Not really. Yeah, that is a terrible shape right there. And I need to figure out what I need to change to get rid of that. Could just be deleting that. I'd say it's very close to what I want, but not exactly there. Let's do another layer forward over here. I think this can go a little bit further. We can do a bit more space inside the driver's seat. I feel like it should connect more correctly over there. You know what, we'll just use the regular blue for that. Okay. Can get away with quite a bit over here, I think. Very close. Okay. Now let's have a look. I think that's looking nice. The actual bed of the truck is a little shallow. So we'll just move that down a layer. Yeah, so this is what I talk about when you need to inlay your details, because I have what would be essentially a normal line like this, a very normal line that you would draw in pixel art, going down my layers. At certain angles, you can just see right through it, and it looks really jank. So we're going to need to go and fix that. So we're just going to inlay all of these details. Just a little bit. And I think that should fix it for the most part. Yeah, it has. It's not as crisp as it was before. I think we can still actually move this hood forward. I forgot the lights are on another layer. I do believe you can copy and drag through multiple layers in Aseprite, but it's always a bit of a stressful endeavor for me, so I don't do it too often. Let's have another look. Okay, that's way too goofy. Let's just do the lights by one layer for now and move everything up a little bit. And then we'll do tow bar at the back, I think, and then I'll call it done. I think the wheels over here are also a little too far back for what an actual car would look like. And if I did have this on a separate layer, I could just drag it all forward and it would be very quick and easy. Let's just merge this down real quick. And okay, I messed something up there. Not a big deal. Okay, there we go. That's looking pretty nice, I must say. Now let's add that little tow bar. Whoopsie daisy. We'll use a nice gray color. Now, you end up issues like this all the time where you want to center something, but 2 pixels is too big for what you want to make. I messed up. Everything is unaligned. That's a bit better. 2 pixels is a little big for like a tow bar. What we want over here. As you can see there, it just kind of looks like a gray mass, but if we add a bit of light at the top and a bit of a darker color at the bottom, it all of a sudden differentiates itself. And you can sort of guess what that is. I did not move the front bumper correctly. Okay. There we go. And I think we're going to just add an antenna and then I'm going to call it done. So for that, you can just do a black dot. And these are the kind of single pixel details you can really get away with. I'm just going to go Alt-N a bunch, give it a bit of height, add a bit of red at the top. There you go. It sort of looks a little amphibious. You see how every now and then it just vanishes? That's what I'm talking about. You get artifacts like that. So what you can do as a solution is just duplicate it. Aseprite, why are you like this? And now we've made it a depth of 2, or a width of 2. And that should look a little better. Looks like I'm gonna have to do this manually for every frame. Joy. There you go. Now I've got an antenna. It's a little bit thick in certain directions, but it'll do its job for the most part. And that's sort of the basics to my process. It's a lot of iterating and just messing around until you get what you're looking for. And it's really quite easy to import into Godot once you have the general setup down. It's just a matter of dragging and dropping the sprite sheet that you've exported, like I did for the Sprite Stack Viewer, which was also made in Godot. And that's basically how I do it. Thanks for coming, and hopefully I interested you in sprite stacking and you feel like this is something you could maybe try out, and I'd love to see your creations. I'm going to be doing more tutorials, of course, so you can either join my Discord, follow me on eggs if you want, or subscribe. All right, see you around.